You really don't need to be very brilliant to get around these rules. That's the problem with these rules.
Hi, I'm Zoe Lillian, and you're watching The Current. Today we'll be discussing the need for reform for lobbying in Congress with Jack Abramoff, lobbyist turned reform activist and author of Capital Punishment, The Hard Truth About Washington's Corruption from America's Most Notorious Lobbyist. We'll also be discussing the relationship between lobbying and public service with Students for Newt representative Angela Morabito. But first, let's go to Mitchell to see what students have to say on the topic.
Thanks, Zoe. I'm here in the ICC asking students what they think about lobbying reform.
I think that lobbying plays a pretty important role in politics because this is such a democratic society, obviously, but not everyone can physically go give their opinion or their voice to the actual politicians. So I think lobbying plays an important middleman role.
In a lot of ways, I think lobbying shouldn't play a huge role in politics. I think that too much money in it can tend to corrupt even the best politicians.
Because America is a democracy and a lot of people have a lot of different views, people think that lobbyists are important. However, I don't think that lobbyists necessarily know their role and they do have too much influence in society.
They provide great information, data, facts for legislators who are trying to create laws that affect our everyday lives. But at the same time, we've seen in the past how lobbyists, such as the tobacco lobby, have really been able to convince senators and representatives to go against the interests of the American people. So I think being able to limit their power while maintaining their influence is the best thing for our democracy.
I think free market of ideas is absolutely fair. I don't necessarily believe it's fair, though, that, politics, the idea that politics can be controlled by those who have the most money, I don't think that's necessarily fair.
I'm here with Jack Abramoff, lobbyist turned reform activist and author of Capital Punishment, The Hard Truth About Washington's Corruption from America's Most Notorious Lobbyist. Mr. Abramoff, thank you so much for being with us here today.
Thanks for having me.
So just to start us off, when you went into lobbying, what kind of overarching goals did you have?
Well, my goals when I entered lobbying were to do everything I could to promote the conservative movement that I came out of and to help them get resources. And number two, to help my clients attain their victories and to promote some of the philosophies that I believed in. And so I did that pretty much throughout the entire time I was a lobbyist. I think the corruption of the lobbying world, unfortunately for me, wasn't evident while I was there because I was in the middle of it. I couldn't see the forest for the trees. And it wasn't really until I even got to prison that I sat down and said, I've got to do something about this system that I participated in. And so that's sort of what led me to write the book.
So you had no idea that there were any boundaries being crossed?
I didn't, I guess I stopped caring in the sense that for me, winning was everything. Every lobbying effort is a political battle, it's a little war, and we were engaged in little wars on behalf of our clients.
So is there a way to kind of figure out how you can get into these loopholes and use these loopholes to your advantage? Is there like a secret playbook? Or?
But you don't need a secret playbook. I mean, the rules are written in a very porous fashion. Mm-hmm. They're written by people who benefit from what I call bribery, putting a lot of gifts and largesse on them, lavishing them with contributions. These are the people who have to write the rules about how much they get. So already they have a disincentive to be very strict. Second of all, 90% of them want to be lobbyists. So they're not going to make rules that are going to make it tough for them later. So
then you said that everything that happened to you and everything that you learned was this reason for you writing the book. So are you glad that you got caught?
Well, I don't know how anybody can look at what happened to us and say you're glad about it. It was horrible. The problem was, while in the midst of what I was doing, I was having great success for my clients who were making a lot of money. We were making a lot of money, and I was giving 80% of the money I made to charity. Mm-hmm. So I didn't stop to say, well, is this right? It was what everybody was doing, or at least I thought everybody was doing. And so I didn't stop to see where I was and take a good sense of it.
What do you think Congress could have done? What's the one thing Congress could have done to restrict your influence and to make it a little less corrupt.
They've got to make it so lobbyists and their clients cannot give any political contributions, can't give any gifts, any meals, anything. That's number one. They've got to take that out. Number two, they've got to take away the revolving door. People who serve the public, who are in Congress, shouldn't be allowed to go and become lobbyists or in the influence industry, whether they're lobbyists or strategic advisors or history professors or whatever the euphemism of the day is. They shouldn't be allowed to do that. And I think those are two very important reforms that I read about.
Because you yourself made use of this revolving door when
Sure,
you've
every
seen them.
lobbyist does.
Are there any final points you'd like to address or
I think you covered everything.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining here at Georgetown, Mr. Abramoff. Now we'll go back to Mitchell, who's with Students for Newt Representative Angela Morabito.
Hi, I'm here with Angela Morabito, who is the representative for Students for Newt and the PR director for the College Conservative. Angela, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Mitchell.
So, you know a lot of young Republicans who want to get involved in politics. How do they plan on making money?
Well, that's an interesting question, Mitchell, because I think that in a capitalist society, which America is or is supposed to be, money flows towards ideas. So I think the general consensus among young conservatives like myself and all of us at the College Conservative is that the ideas have to come first, and the money will find the ideas that have a lot of grassroots support in America.
Does anybody you know want to go into lobbying? Does anyone want to be a lobbyist as a career?
I can't say that I know anyone who is planning right off the bat to go into lobbying. I think lobbying sort of comes later.
This is a question I was going to save for my parents, but where do lobbyists come from?
Well, Mitchell, when a mommy lobbyist and a daddy lobbyist love each other very much.
It's a scary thought.
Yes, it is. It's very scary. But in all honesty, lobbyists usually come from elsewhere in government or from in the legal field. You'll hear about the revolving door system where people come out of Congress or from other parts of government, maybe wait a few years and then come back and start lobbying the same group that they used to work for.
Do you have a problem with the revolving door, with people working for a group and then coming back to lobby it?
No, I don't. I think that's how American democracy works, is you influence the government in any way you can. And as long as a legislator is not swayed from representing the true interest of his or her district, I think that's okay. But still, the legislator's first duty is to their constituents and not to a company.
Great. Thanks so much for joining me today, Angela.
Thank you, Mitchell.
Back to you, Zoe.
Well, that's our show. I'm Zoe Lillian, and you've been watching The Current.